PTSD and the correlations with introverted sensing. Please take caution and consider this a trigger warning for this video. I've provided a list of the aspects of introverted sensing on the screen for you to reference. Remember, this is your perception of these things. But the one I want to focus on for this video is related to lasting impressions and imprinting. Usually when we think of bonds and loyalties, we think of people we would do anything for, our close friends and family. However, in this regard, I am discussing negative impressions from trauma and/or abuse resulting in anxiety, fear, and PTSD, where a piece of you is trapped in the past, and when that memory gets triggered, you are reliving a past event rather than truly perceiving what is happening in that very moment. First, let's start off by going over a brief description of what PTSD is. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a disorder in which a person has difficulty recovering after experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. This can be very subjective as to what is considered terrifying. What's terrifying to a child may not be terrifying to an adult. What's terrifying to you may not be terrifying to me. The condition may last months or years with triggers that can bring back memories of the trauma accompanied by intense emotional and physical reactions. Symptoms may include nightmares or unwanted memories of the trauma, avoidance of situations that bring back memories of the trauma, heightened reactions, anxiety, depressed moods. You may experience agitation, irritability, hostility, hypervigilance, and self-destructive behaviors. In extreme cases, you can even experience a state of hallucination where you are projecting your memory out and perceiving it as reality in that moment. Everyone can experience PTSD, but I have noticed that PTSD manifests differently depending on your personality type. For example, I know an ENTJ who has SI trickster, who literally said, "I don't care about my past trauma." That's pretty much how most people think about their trickster function. They don't care about its use for the most part, or at least they think they don't care about it. However, she is completely unaware, blind spot, of how she attacks others and justifies her actions when she is triggered. Instead, she sees it as someone else crossing her boundaries. This is TE Hero coming in to take down the threat coming from her SI trickster that she is projecting onto the other person as crossing her boundaries. These boundaries are invisible and unknown to others because they are actually triggers from trauma. Another example would be an INFP who said they basically live in a life trapped by PTSD with SI in their child function. If you recall, the child function is like an energy bunny or a child hopped up on sugar that just goes and goes and goes until it crashes or gets hit from their blind spot, aka the trickster. Thus, an INFP with PTSD would constantly be trapped in their memories, recalling the trauma over and over and over again, only to get hit from behind out of nowhere by another SE trigger, causing another round of anxiety and fear and whatnot. These impressions or imprinting usually results in sensory memories, meaning you recall or trigger the memory by hitting one of your 5 senses. Thus, a certain sound may remind you of an attack. For example, the sound of fireworks during 4th of July is a pretty difficult time for many soldiers who get thrown back into the battlefield by hearing the explosions. Or a particular cologne that your attacker was wearing hits you in the face by a total stranger walking by on the street, and now you are in a state of PTSD because you got triggered by the scent. In some cases, triggers are created through repetition or conditioning, such as your uncle would say a particular phrase before he would force himself on you. It could be something innocuous, like, "It's time for our weekly get-together," And now anytime a girlfriend says the same thing, you recoil, panic, experience anxiety, and dissociate. What's not talked about very much is how to rewire the brain so you can overcome PTSD. Now, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a psychologist, so please regard this as informational and my own opinion. However, I do believe it is helpful to anyone struggling. Deprogramming is more than simply becoming aware and finding coping mechanisms to live as normal a life as possible. Deprogramming will help with PTSD, DID, dissociative identity disorder, and MK Ultra, but these are also good practices everyone should follow. Before you can truly heal, you need to put yourself into an environment where you are truly safe. You must be free of your abuse, no matter what form of abuse that takes. It is in no one's best interest if you stay in a family dynamic that is abusive. You have to get away from your abusers and handlers. You need to stay aware and conscious of time. Dissociating is not the same as daydreaming. Although you can lose track of time and become blind to your surroundings when daydreaming or getting lost in your thoughts, you are still cognizant of yourself. Dissociating separates you from yourself. Multiple personality disorder is the old name for dissociative identity disorder. It is not multiple personalities, but fragments of one personality where only a segment or portion of that personality is able to be accessed at that point in time. It is best to not refer to alters by other names as if they are different people. That reinforces the segmentation and compartmentalization of your mind. The goal should be to reintegrate all aspects of yourself into one whole personality, which will allow for all the compartmentalized and repressed memories and thoughts to become fluid, and for the person to have continuity of thought. Being able to daydream is usually quite difficult or nearly impossible for someone who is under MK Ultra. Being able to dream and think of wonderful possibilities for the future is hindered when you are being controlled by outside influences. One way to stay aware and conscious of time is to get a watch. Anytime you start to feel yourself dissociate, check the time and bring yourself back into awareness. Next is to detox and deprogram. Remove yourself from society and all its noise for as long as you can. I understand that work and other obligations can make this difficult, but do what you can and ask your true friends and support system to help you out. If you can go to a quiet lake house without the city noise and leave your phone inside, something of that sort would be ideal. Turn off the TV and video games and allow the fresh air and sunshine to surround you. Be sure you are putting good, healthy, fresh food into your body. There are so many chemicals in processed foods that have an effect on your brain. Eat fresh veggies and fruits from farmers markets. Limit the crap that comes from a box or a can. Cut the alcohol and the caffeine. Give your body real energy and give your mind a safe and peaceful environment. Then, write down your memories. When you are safe and relaxed, repressed and compartmentalized memories will start to show flashes of themselves or leak out through dreams and night terrors. Write down as much detail as you can recall. Even if it's only a flash, write it down immediately. Do not wait. At the very least, write down a word or phrase to remind you of the memory so you don't forget to write it out in full later. This means you need to always keep a journal on you during your deprogramming phase. Even if memory is not repressed, as in some cases of rape or domestic violence, writing out details of the situation can help to logically address the issue. It is on this conscious, logical level that wise choices can be made to positively move forward with life. Writing down your memories rather than sharing them out loud allows the brain to move it from the emotional subconscious, where you can't access it at will, to the logical conscious part of the brain, where you can access the memory without a trigger. This allows for you to review what you wrote down without the post-traumatic stress and observe the memory from an objective point of view to overcome the trauma and release the wound in order to heal, and it no longer being a triggered stressor response. In Cathy O'Brien's book PTSD, Time to Heal, Cathy recommends following a 21-day rule. Just because you wrote out your memory in detail does not necessarily mean it is all true. Factual memory can become intertwined deliberately with mind control programming or inadvertently with television programs, movies, video games, books, other people's stories, etc. It is essential to deprogram the program first and then untangle reality from fantasy. You can do this by questioning yourself as well as applying the 21-day rule. Truth by its very nature never goes away, while lies and fantasy fade over time. Take your fully written out memory, date the top of the page, and safely store it out of sight for 21 days. Do not verbalize it during this time. Then reread what you wrote. After 21 days, lies and fantasy fade, while truth is as strong as ever. If any parts are unfamiliar to you or seem faded, they most likely are tangles that occurred from heightened suggestibility. This 21-day rule was taught to Cathy by Mark Phillips, who used to help spies recover from PTSD after being tortured. You also need to get to know your triggers. Triggers are key to unlocking compartmentalized memory. I'm going to differentiate a trigger from a totem. A totem is something that recalls a memory without the traumatic stress, such as hearing a song on the radio and it reminds you of your first dance. Whereas a trigger stimulates the mind of something traumatic. The brain does not automatically assign a logical trigger to the trauma, which is why asking yourself, "Was I abused?" may not produce further memory. Your brain may have filed it under pleasure or perhaps a reward such as money or candy. I call this having your wires crossed, where pain and pleasure have been inverted. Cathy tells you in her book that her father molested her from birth before he sold her into the MKUltra program after getting caught for selling child pornography. And even though her body did feel pleasure, her mind knew it was traumatic and automatically dissociated from the events and held it behind amnesia walls. It wasn't until later on, when she was safe and going through deprogramming, that memory flashes resurfaced. She used an example of a blow pop. I'm talking about the candy being a trigger, such as someone who was forced to give a blow job but was given a blow pop afterwards as a reward. That association may not be known consciously if the memory is repressed, but a blow pop will be a trigger nonetheless. While you are in your healing process, be aware of the music, television, internet, video games, books, etc., to which you are subjecting yourself. Understand that you are in a heightened state of suggestibility and choose wisely. And watch your watch. If or when outside stimulation does trigger memory flashes, make immediate note of them to write out in full later when you are in a place of safety and no distractions or interruptions. One way to consciously recognize your own triggers may be to make a collage. As you go through magazines, clip out any image or words that strike a deep response and save it aside in a box. Once the box is full of clippings, arrange it into collages and write down what each of the collages meant to you. This should help trigger repressed memories. Another way to deliberately trigger yourself is by writing out a detailed timeline of your life. Be sure to include calendar dates such as birthdays and holidays. Abuse is common during occasions involving relatives, religion, ritual, or politics. Once you have been able to find safety for your mind and body, recalled the memory in a logical manner that you can observe from a third-person perspective rather than an emotional first-person perspective, and have determined the triggers associated with the trauma, you can begin the process of rewiring the brain to no longer associate those triggers with the trauma, so you can live life normally, even if that trigger is present. This is a form of classical conditioning, where you are reconditioning the mind to associate the trigger with something positive, rather than reinforcing the negative traumatic event. So, for the blow pop example, you could give yourself a blow pop after accomplishing a goal you set out for yourself and receive it as a reward. Over time, you would overwrite or reroute the association of the blow pop from the abuse to accomplishing a goal and being successful. Avoiding your triggers is one reason people have a hard time healing from PTSD. This will require you to face the fears and anxieties head on. This is why you should do the reconditioning in a safe environment, away from your abusers, so you can allow yourself to relax and be calm enough to approach things you usually avoid. For all those suffering from PTSD, DID, and MK Ultra, my heart goes out to you, and I wish you success and a full and speedy recovery. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it.